We're live.
Ready to rock and roll.
Yes, sir. We're good.
We live?
Yeah, we're live.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to a for all time after show. This is going to be a special live episode. Obviously, if you're watching this, Zenn, I want to thank you before we get started. This was obviously supposed to be on the Sons of Mjolnir channel, but I didn't know that you have to wait 24 hours to go live on YouTube. So you were gracious enough to get this all set up and going on the Listen 3000 podcast, which is an amazing channel. So thank you for setting this up.
Of course, man. You know, we had to make it happen, and we made it happen, man.
Dude, we had to make it happen. We had to come back and talk about this episode. I mean, how freaking crazy was that ending?
Insane, bro. Insane. I'm like
Dude.
still in shock.
Literally, I mean, it's even hard to talk about. We've talked about this, and if anyone out there that is watching this has watched some of our previous episodes, we've talked before. I saw these early, so I've been sitting on this for like a month with this cliffhanger, and even just watching it back right now, it's like still just leaves me speechless. Like, I just can't believe that's where they went with it. And I absolutely loved it. I love a good cliffhanger. And we were talking about this before we started. It really gave me that like Infinity War vibes. Like after the snap, like just like, what are we going to do now? Like we thought we had a plan and now we don't have shit. Like,
Yo, can you hear me?
yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Oh, okay, yeah. I thought it blinked out there for a second.
We
Now,
good?
Yeah, we should be straight, yeah. Okay, yeah, cool. We good. What was the question, man? My bad. I was control room stuff.
No, you're good, man. You're good. Just some technical difficulties. But I was just saying, like I said, it gave me that Infinity War vibe of just like, what are we going to do now? Like after everyone gets dusted, it's like, at least for me, it's like, oh, something's going to happen at the last second. They're going to figure it out. But nope, they don't figure it out. We get the kind of Sopranos cut to white ending.
Yeah, man. And it was like, I'm still in shock, bro. Still, man. Like, it was like, I wasn't expecting what they did a lot of this episode, to be honest. Some of the choices that they made threw me off. And I'm like, yo, this is crazy. I don't want to jump around too much, but like the whole Ravonna and them getting rid of General Dox, I was not expecting that.
Yeah,
I wasn't
that was
expecting
insane too. I mean, I figure like since this is live, I mean, I'm sure if people are tuning into this and watching this, they are coming fresh off the episode anyway. So I think it's okay if we kind of jump around a little bit instead of going like, sequential order. So yeah, let's just get into talking about Dox, because like you said, that was absolutely insane. And I really love to, at least when I watched it the first time, I had like my headphones on and everything. And like you can hear like the blood dripping, like when B-15 comes in the room, and I'm like, holy shit, like they went there with that.
Shout out to Jim, because we were just in the watch party, and that was one of the things that he pointed out as well. Like you can, the sound design, how you could hear, how they didn't show it, but you could still hear what happened. You know what I mean? Like, and it was just as effective. You know what I mean?
Oh, 100%. I mean, that's like one of the great things. We're in spooky season right now. Yeah. One of my favorite horror movies is Halloween, the original Halloween. And like, that's kind of one of John Carpenter's main things with, I think most of his movies, but specifically Halloween, in that it's a lot scarier to not show the kills sometimes, or like what happens, because what you imagine in your mind as like the audience member is always going to be scarier than like what you can visually be shown. Yeah. So I think it was really smart, which obviously it's also because it's Disney and it's PG, like they're not going to be showing that blood and shit. But like I said, I thought it was a really cool way to do that. And it honestly kind of made it even more scary to imagine like them just being squished by that box. Like, oh my God, that I can only imagine how terrifying that was.
Yeah, man. I totally wasn't expecting that. When it kept going, I just really thought they were gonna try to scare them into like, get on their side. You know what I mean? I'm like, all right, they're gonna stop it and they're gonna, whatever. But no, she just kept pressing the button. Then they zoomed in on Miss Minutes' face and she was just into it. I'm like, all right, yo, what are they doing?
Oh yeah, she was loving it, dude. We've talked about that. I think we talked about it on our last episode for episode 3. She's got screws loose for sure, man. I know I defended her a little bit, I guess. Like I felt bad for her, but now I'm like, nah, fuck Miss Minutes, dude. And not only that, but Ravonna too. I thought this was a very like drastic turn for Ravonna as well. Like obviously we've seen her in this season, like she's not with the gang, the heroes of the story.
Yeah.
But I wasn't expecting her to go like full on, like, yeah, I'm gonna murder these people. Like that really, I was like, holy shit, she's going there.
Bro, it was crazy, man. I just to see that turn from them and then like seeing Ravonna just be so complicit and like, all right, yeah, we're going everywhere, like we're taking it there. You know what I mean? Like to get this done and save and do what we want with the TVA,
Absolutely. And like I want to get into it. So like we said, the Ravonna switch up was really surprising for me, but we're speaking on Ravonna, so I want to get into it really quickly as well. The kind of Ravonna's revelation, kind of what I'm calling it, with her being a general in He Who Remains army, and she commanded the army during the multiversal war. I thought that was nuts. And it, goes back to what we've been talking about, how we know that they have this kind of deeper connection, from the comics and stuff like that. So to see that she was there, not only she was there for the multiversal war, but played a very intricate role in that war, I think is absolutely bonkers. And it also goes back to something we discussed in episode 3 with Miss Minutes and how we were talking about, what if she was around for the Council of Kangs and she knows more Kang variants than just He Who Remains. I think that can apply to Ravonna as well. Again, if she was there before the multiversal war, she knows more Kangs and more Kangs know her, right?
True.
So I think that just opens up a whole new can of worms for Ravonna's character and like where we could see her go after in these next 2 episodes.
Yeah, man. And man, you dropped one on me there. Yeah, like what it's just it's crazy what was the life that she lived before he wiped their minds, and just how I know we talked about, like, I guess on previous episodes, Kang's relationship with Ravonna in the comics, and like seeing how we've seen the relationship with He Remains through this clip, and now the Victor Tomley thing, and how like when he said wipe their minds, it was so cold. It was just like, yo, like he didn't care at all. Like whatever he had planned, it was like, yo, erase it.
I gotta say, I think he felt a little bit about wiping Ravonna's mind, because if you remember, he does say he's like, do protocol 40, what is it, 47 or 42?
42, yeah.
And protocol 42, and then he's like, I'm sorry. So like I think like he did feel a little bad about it, but at the end of the day, like he's got to protect the timeline. You know what I mean? He's got to do what he's got to do.
No, that's right.
But that brings up a great point. This is just a small little Easter egg. I mean, that's kind of what we do here. So I got to throw it out there. It's just fun. I don't think it really is that important, but I think that like we said, he shouts out Protocol 42. And I think that could be in reference to Avengers number 42. And that is going to be, hold on, I got to see the year. 1998, and it is the second issue in the Kang Dynasty storyline. So I thought that was, like I said, in that issue, basically Kang comes to Earth and shows the Avengers and like world leaders possible futures of how the Earth will be destroyed, and it's basically like, well, I'm the only one that can save you. Typical Kang time bullshit. But like I said, I don't think that necessarily is like a clue to what's going to happen, but again, just a fun little Easter egg that I think they could be referencing. Again, it can't be a coincidence that that's the second issue in Kang Dynasty,
Yeah, man. I feel like they're sprinkling everything's by design with Marvel. You know what I mean? I feel like that was something.
Well, speaking of everything being by design, Zenn, let's get in to the nitty gritty of it. Let's get into the deep down and nerdy shit. This is kind of what I was teasing you guys with over at the alternate timeline with Ouroboros. And I think that while this ending is crazy and insane, I think we can decipher it. I think we can come up with something that makes some sense. It might not be true, but I think we can make this all make sense. Okay. So Zenn, everyone out there watching and listening, are you ready to go down this rabbit hole with me for the Ouroboros theory?
Let's go, man. Let's go.
Let's go, baby. Let's go. So a major part of this episode is going to be right after all this Ravonna stuff. We get Victor Timely enters the TVA finally, and then he meets Ouroboros, which, by the way, before we get really deep into this, I got to say I loved the reaction from Jonathan Majors meeting Ouroboros. He's like, like it was so funny.
They both were fanning out. You know what I mean? Like first it was Victor Timely, and then Ouroboros was like, hold on, what was your name again? And it was like, it was mutual. He's like, you got to sign my copy of the TVA. Oh no, you got to sign mine. It was like, okay, all right.
And I loved to a part that I forgot that I remembered watching back and I was laughing my ass off was he brings out his model Obi and he's like, I could only put one coat of paint on it. I didn't have time to make models of all of us. I'm honestly embarrassed that Victor's here to see it. Like that was so funny. But let's get back to business here. We're getting off on a tangent here. Ouroboros, right? Victor Timely meets Ouroboros, and we discover that this creates a sort of paradox. And so we learned in episode 1, OB wrote the TVA handbook, and then young Victor Timely receives that handbook. We learn in this episode that OB based all of his research off of Victor Timely. So it becomes a chicken and the egg situation. What came first? And we have OB even references this himself as it's like a snake eating its own tail. Mm-hmm. So this is where we're getting deep and nerdy. So how I explain this and how I think that this can all relate back to the temporal loom and the temporal loom exploding is so with the TVA guidebook, this creates what's known as a bootstrap paradox. And so what a bootstrap paradox is it's basically when an item or a person goes back in time and then it creates a time loop to where that object or person has no discernible point of origin. So with the TVA guidebook in this example, again, Victor Timely gets the book, which is based off OB. OB bases it off Timely. So who created the TVA guidebook originally? There's really no answer for that. Like I said, that's why it's a paradox, the bootstrap paradox. Right. But luckily, there is an explanation for the bootstrap paradox. And obviously, this is all theoretical stuff. But there is one possible explanation for the bootstrap paradox, which is the multiverse explanation. And when we are putting this in terms of Loki, we know that there is a multiverse. The multiverse is alive. We saw that in season 1. So we can use this explanation as a fact in terms of this, right? Are you still with me here, Zenn?
I'm here.
Everybody watching, are you with me? So we have our bootstrap paradox. Again, who created the TVA guidebook? No one knows. There's no answer to it, but maybe there is an answer. So with this multiverse explanation, it basically says that a time traveler can travel back in time to a duplicate world from their own, which will be exactly the same until the point which they arrive. And thus, from that moment, they can control and alternate the future. Does that make sense then?
Yeah.
So using this multiversal explanation, I think that we can say that this all comes back to, again, he who remains. And so in this situation with this bootstrap paradox, we have he who remains is the originator of the TVA guidebook. Mm-hmm. And then we have Ravonna playing the role of our time traveler for our multiverse explanation. So Ravonna goes to Victor Timely in the sacred timeline, which is her going to a duplicate timeline of He Who Remains. Right. And then once she gives him that book, it branches into another branch timeline. And so what I'm getting at is that this was all set in place by He Who Remains to ensure that the TVA will exist within this new multiverse.
Right.
Because like we talked about last time, Zen, the whole point of the sacred timeline is to prevent Kang variants. So when He Who Remains was alive, there were no branches. There was just the one timeline. Mm-hmm. But he knew that if Sylvie killed him, it would make the multiverse come alive. The multiverse would explode. So to me, this bootstrap paradox was his contingency plan to ensure that, like I said, the TVA would still exist in this new multiverse. Does that make sense to you, Zen?
Yeah, that's some foresight right there, man.
So that's how I explain this paradox and why it is even there, right? But let's take it a little deeper. Let's even peel back some more layers, because I think all of this also revolves around OB, Ouroboros. And this is why this whole bootstrap paradox is in place. I think Ouroboros is living up to his name of an Ouroboros, and he's the one to ensure that this bootstrap paradox will take place. Again, thus ensuring that the TVA exists, the sacred timeline will exist, and all of that. And He Who Remain will eventually be back in the Citadel at the end of time. So what an Ouroboros is not just a comic book character's name, which it is. There is an Ouroboros judge in the comics, but an Ouroboros is actually a symbol in many different cultures, meaning many different things. But the main thing that it usually means, so the symbol is of a snake eating its own tail, which again, OB references himself in this episode. And what the snake eating its tail represents is wholeness and infinity. And then in ancient Egypt, they believed that the Ouroboros was the beginning of the end of time. Does that sound a little familiar, Zen? The end of time?
Yeah.
So, and also where this all comes back as well is, so an Ouroboros in Norse mythology is what's known as Jormungandr, or the world serpent. And so the world serpent circles around Midgard, which is Earth, excuse me, and Yggdrasil, the world tree. So how this all comes into play, how this all relates, what am I talking about here? So Ouroboros is an actual Ouroboros, and he is there to ensure the TVA and the temporal looms constant renewal and from death and recreation. So we talked about before, the TVA members have had their mind wiped multiple times. Mm-hmm. So what if that this temporal loom exploding has also happened multiple times? And Ouroboros is something that He Who Remains purposely put in the TVA to ensure, like I said, that this cycle will always happen. And we've talked about this before, Zen. I don't think that that means Ouroboros is aware of this. I would like to think that he unknowingly is a pawn of He Who Remains.
Yeah.
But again, I think He Who Remains put him there to ensure this cycle. So when the loom does explode, which it'll eventually always will, he is there to make that cycle. The bootstrap paradox is there to create that time loop in order for the TVA to always survive and for He Who Remains to always be able to come back. And again, that goes back to what we talked about, how they're relating these things to Norse mythology and using Norse mythology as an explanation, and how we talked about how the temporal loom symbolizes Yggdrasil, the world tree.
You cooking, man.
So what do you think, Zen? Am I cooking?
You're
what
cooking.
People out there, am I cooking?
You're
or what?
cooking,
I know,
man.
that it's long and nerdy. It's deep and nerdy, but are you with me still?
Nah, you cooking, man. And it's crazy, man, just thinking about it, because I'm assuming these Mobius, B-15, obviously, Ouroboros, I'm assuming these aren't their real names. I'm assuming these were names given to them by He Who Remains when he created the TVA. So the fact that his name is Ouroboros, like he had this foresight to name him that, knowing everything that the Ouroboros means and it represents. And even now, this theory, which I I really think it's something to what you're saying right now. It's crazy. Just that goes back to what I was saying. There's the foresight that he has to just keep all this in motion. It's kind of crazy when you think about it, man. Like this one guy, you know what I mean? Like really thought about all of that. You know what I mean?
And I think it relates too back to what we were talking about and kind of speculating on of why OB can remember things that other people can't. And also why is OB the only person in this, like, you know, tech and repair place? Why doesn't he have any partners? It's only him. I think, again, because that's why he's by himself, because he is, again, he's more than just a regular TVA agent. He is this Ouroboros purposely put there by He Who Remains. And so he doesn't need to wipe his memory because he's just there to continue the cycle and always continuing the cycle.
Right.
And so I think that we can use all of this to relate back to this crazy ending that we're talking about when the temporal loom explodes. So we talked about this, and for people watching, hopefully you guys watched our episode 3 breakdown where we broke down the science of the temporal loom. If you all remember our word of the day from that, it was entropy. Yeah. So just a refresher for people who maybe forgot or maybe weren't on that episode, didn't watch that episode yet. Basically, again, and I'm not a scientist or anything like that. I did this all this my own research. So if I get something wrong, and if someone out there is more scientifically inclined than I am, please forgive me for, you know, getting something wrong here. But basically how I understand it is entropy is like the measurement of the distance of energy, right? So when energy is very spread out and it's very chaotic, you have high levels of entropy. But when energy is very condensed and it's in order, it has very low entropy. And so that is what is powering the temporal loom. And so in this episode, when we see it explode, it's because, like we were saying, the entropy of the timelines is so great and is growing at such a rapid pace, the loom cannot keep up with it. And that goes with what OB is talking about in this episode with the temporal radiation. All of that is just at such high amounts. Like I said, we see what had the temporal meltdown happens, right?
Yeah.
So how I'm relating this back to the Ouroboros, though, and again, why I think that Ouroboros is kind of at the center of all of this, is there's another school of thought with the Ouroboros that links the microverse to the greater universe in the galaxy. And I think that this can relate back to how we could possibly get the Conqueror coming back. And I think that this temporal loom explosion could potentially be his doorway back into the timeline. And so how this comes together is, again, the Ouroboros, one school of thought is that the snake eating its own tail represents the intimate link between the micro world and the cosmos, going all the way from subatomica to, like I said, super galactica, which is just like the universe at large. Mm-hmm. So again, by Ouroboros being there and making sure that this cycle of renewal and rebirth always takes place. And again, like the Egyptians thought, it symbolizes the end of time. He's there to ensure, like I said, all of this takes place. The time loop takes place. And again, this could, with the temporal loom exploding, all of that entropy, the time energy going at astronomical rates, that could be a gateway for the Conqueror to come back from the subatomica that he's trapped in.
True.
What do you think about that, Zenn?
I love that theory, man. I love that theory, and that goes for everybody who thought he got beat by ants.
Yeah, right.
He's coming.
Hey, he did. He did. I will defend Ant-Man all day. We don't want to get into that conversation, and we don't want to do that.
But nah, man, I love that theory, man, and I love how this all connects. It just. I'm still in shock, bro. It's like, what is next? It's like, what?
So do you think, like I said, I know that this is super nerdy and super, like, we're getting into some real world, like, you know, theoretical physics and whatnot.
Right.
But do you think that that's a plausible answer for all of this? Like, does that Do you think that tracks all this madness that I'm yapping about?
No, man. Everything you saying, I'm on board with it, man.
Okay,
Jumping in
good.
the chat real quick. Dennis has said from the alternate timeline, he said like another Ragnarok situation, but for Loki.
Yes, yes. So that's another thing. Jormungandr, the Ouroboros, represents Ragnarok, the end of all things, which we've obviously already seen Ragnarok. But again, going under the assumption we're using Norse mythology to explain things from the TVA.
Right.
This temporal meltdown you can say it's representing another Ragnarok, again, with OB being Jormungandr and the temporal loom being Yggdrasil, the world tree.
Right.
So yeah, shout out Dennis, man, my man. He's following me. He's with it.
Right.
Do we got anything else in the chat? Anybody else?
That was it.
Shout out Dennis, man.
Yeah,
Thanks for tuning in. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, I think that everything is connected, man. I'm crazy. I'm going nuts, man. It's all connected. Everything's coming back. But I can't believe that they're going to leave us this season without another Kang variant or, Victor Timely coming back. And speaking of the alternate timeline, I think, which I wanted to save it for, no offense, wanted to save it for our discussion here. I didn't want to throw it in the comments. But what Jam and Dennis were talking about, and you were talking about, with how after the temporal loom explodes, they get sent back to their timelines. I think you guys are right on the money with that. And going back to what we're talking about with the entropy and the, temporal energy, I think that's what's going to happen. Is they're either going to, whether or not it's like their specific timeline, I'm not sure, but I think everyone is just going to be bounced all around. And kind of going back what we talked about with time slipping and how with the temporal loom exploding, that's possible again. So I think we're going to get Loki time slipping again. We've seen that in the trailers.
Yeah.
But I think we can get everybody time slipping, like we talked about, like just like entropy, like we're talking about entropy, high entropy equals chaos. It's chaos, just absolute chaos in the TVA. Everyone is time slipping. Like Loki and OB, they know what that is. And like, if that happens, they're like, okay, like we got to do this again. But for everyone else, they're going to freak out. They don't know what the hell's going on.
Yeah.
So like I said, I think you guys are right on the money. And I really think that's kind of where we're going to go. We're going to see everybody after this explosion. Like I said, after the cut to white. But what are your thoughts on that? I mean, like I said, obviously those were your thoughts. But.
Nah, man, man. I feel like they're getting them sent to these other timelines, because it was one thing we were going back and forth with. It was like, all right, so something like that happens, somebody gets pruned, where do they go? That's it, like, you know what I mean? Like now, like. Yeah. That was a very interesting question that Jam brought up, like the difference between like, okay, so Loki prunes Loki, so when he does that, he just goes back into the time stream, but when X5 prunes Ravonna, how does that? I think that's a very good train of thought, like something to chew on for sure. Yeah. Because I don't know, I still feel like the Void is gonna come into play again, but because I honestly, I don't know. But after the timeline thing blowing up, it's like, do they go back to the Void? Like, you know what I mean? It's like, I really don't know. Do they just go to another timeline? I would say,
I mean, this is just how I would rationalize it. And again, I could be completely wrong. Excuse me. I think Ravonna goes to the Void for sure, because she's just kind of on her path, right? Like, while not on the sacred timeline, like she's on her path. But with the Loki situation, that's where it gets a little bit more complicated. I think we can kind of use the same bootstrap paradox to kind of explain the Loki situation as well. Like, if Loki prunes himself, which causes him to go back in the timeline to then be able to prune himself, right? Like, it's another loop. It's another bootstrap paradox.
Yeah.
Which, like I said, I think that's what makes it different. So like Loki has to prune himself in order to be there.
Exactly.
And he has to prune himself in order to then be in the temporal loom when Victor Timely gets spaghettified and all that stuff. So I think that that is, again, going back to, because the temporal loom is all this energy is going crazy. And like we talked about, that's what powers the TVA. I think this is going to, at least for me, fall under one of those temporal anomalies that we're experiencing within the TVA. Remember how we this is a while ago now, but episode 1, we talked about how time is infiltrating the TVA, and that's causing all of these weird things to happen. I think that's how I would put that under that box. Is, like I said, the reason this loop was created is because this all happened when the temporal loom was going insane, allowing, like we talked about, the time slipping, and then again another one of these bootstrap paradox, which I think this might even be a grandfather paradox as opposed to a bootstrap. But I mean, it's very similar. It's time travel, man. Like, you get it.
Yeah. But yeah, they made some. They take it's some choices in this episode, man. There's definitely some choices, man.
Dude, I love it. I love, like, leave me hanging. You know what I mean? I think it's exciting. I love theorizing about stuff. So anything for me to chew on and like go crazy over, I'm all for. But I want to talk about too, Loki and Sylvie. And we get another good conversation with them. And I mean, I think, at least for me, one of the coldest lines that we've gotten in one of these MCU shows with Hiddleston, we are gods, and like literally like drop the mic, walk out the room. Oh, I love that scene. What did you think about that scene, Zenn?
I thought that scene was great, and something I said on the watch party, and I'll say it again here. You could tell she didn't grow up on Asgard, because just just the whole way Loki's his whole thinking in that sense, and he's not wrong, but like, you know, you could just tell like she grew up away from that. So like even her mind is like, she can't even put herself in that seat of in this control. Like, we can't control these people. Like, you know what I mean? Like, she's been through so much because of this situation, and he's just like, no, we have to fix this. You know what I mean? And she's like, we're not gods. He's like, but we are. You know what I mean?
Gods. So, like, which is something that Mobius reminded him of in last week's episode. I think that was kind of like, looking back on it, I think that was a little intentional. Where, you know, he's like, you know, I forget that you're one of them. And I think Loki was remembering that in that situation when he's having that conversation with Sylvie.
Agreed.
But I really loved it. I think it was, we talked about, so while this went live, we also have a recorded breakdown that went live on the Sons of Mjolnir channel with my good friend Josh Martin Jones from The Streamer. And something that we talked about, which, sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. I'm thinking all over the place right now. But something that we talked about, and I think, you know, kind of relates, is it feels like this conversation was just a continuation of the same conversation that they've been having throughout the whole series. So like, we get them at the McDonald's talking about like the free will, and you know, this is something that me and Zenn have talked about pretty extensively in our other episodes about, you know, the consequences and how Loki and Sylvie see those consequences differently. And to me, I really felt like this was kind of the conclusion of that conversation that they've been having. And again, while there's not an answer either way. Like you said, Loki has great points. I agree with Loki on a lot of stuff, but I also agree with Sylvie on a lot of stuff, as a matter of, you know, can the TVA be a force for good? Or, you know, is it better to just wipe your hands, you know, burn it to the ground and just start completely over? And to me, I really felt like, which this goes to your theory, Zenn, which I've always loved. I think this is a good example of maybe Loki taking over the reins and being the Loki who remains, like you were saying, because a lot of what he was saying was giving me major He Who Remains vibes. Like, I think that if He Who Remains was around, he would agree with Loki. And for real though, like basically Loki's like, you know, like free will is great, right? But you can't just give everyone free will and walk away. It doesn't work like that. And I think, again, that's like, while Loki has very good intentions and is coming at it from a good place, I think that is a very He Who Remains kind of attitude to what's going on. And even the line "We are gods," I think is again a very He Who Remains attitude to this. And again, I think that it could be hinting at, like you were saying, having a Loki who remains.
Yeah. The more I think about it, the more I'm like, man, I've seen a lot of people say that they can see Loki going back to a villainous role within the MCU or within what we have going on right now. And I honestly, before this episode, not to say that I totally agree with that theory, but before this episode, I really couldn't see that. But after seeing that scene, the We Are God scene, I could see like him kind of getting like, taking everything on himself. Like, yo, I have to be the one to control all this. And depending what perspective you're looking at, like from Sylvie's perspective, like that's not good. Like you know what I mean? Like, who are you to sit at this top of this hill and control everything because you believe that's the only way to do it. You know what I mean? So like
100%.
Yeah, man. It's man, it's a lot, man. This episode was crazy.
Dude, crazy. Yeah. But like I said, I really love that. And I mean, any opportunity for Hiddleston and Sophie DiMartina to play off each other, and like we talked about, I just love the theme that they're playing with of, like I said, the kind of philosophical differences between them. And like I said, the kind of ethical question of, free will. And again, like you can see both sides of it. And I just I'll take any interaction with them I can get. But yeah, man, like I said, I really think that I don't know about the villain thing though. I think I'm going to push back on that again.
I don't totally agree with that, but that point. I
see what you're saying.
Right.
I see the lines for sure. But I don't know, like we talked about, I think like Loki's a hero now for sure. Like he's not going back. But I think it does bring up an interesting question though. And I think you can argue, again, there's not really a right or wrong answer, but do you consider He Who Remains a villain?
That's true.
I mean, like, again, I'll say it once. I've said it a million times. You cannot trust a Kang. You can't trust a Kang. I don't care what multiverse he's from, what branch timeline. You do not trust a Nathaniel Richards, a Kang, He Who Remains. But I will say, if you think about it again, it's like, I think it all comes down to perspective. What He Who Remains doing better for everyone at the end of the day? Or was it more of a, nihilistic control thing?
Right.
And I think you can go either way on that. And I think you can apply that to Loki. So like I said, if he does take that position, I don't think it'll be as like, oh man, villain.
Stuff. Yeah, exactly. Because, it'll
be.
Nah, go.
Go ahead. Go. No, dude, cook. Man.
All I was gonna say was like, every villain thinks they're the good guy in their story. You know what I mean? So like you said, it goes back to perspective at the end of the day. You know what I mean? Like, and that puts Loki and Sylvie on opposing sides. It keeps seeming like the more they try to, bring it together, the more their ideology is different, and it kind of continues to push them apart. You know what I mean? Like on opposing sides, just because it's just like, it's a perspective that she has, a perspective that he has. You know what I mean? And as things keep going, you see Loki kind of agreeing more and more with He Who Remains. Even from the first 2 episodes, he was like, yo, I met him at the end of the time and he made sense. You know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, man.
Well, and that's the other thing too, I think would be cool and would work very well, like kind of thematically, is we see in the first episode, we talked about like he is frantic, like freaking out over He Who Remains, and not only He Who Remains, but the decision of what just went down. And he's saying, he said that this was all going to happen. Like, did he know that this was going to happen, or, blah, blah. I think it would be cool. Like you said, I think we're kind of seeing him realize what all that meant. And like, while in the first episode, he like could not process what was going on, I think he's slowly starting to realize all that really went down. And all, like, we're going back to consequences. We talked about Sylvie has 100% accepted her consequences. She's got her sword strapped up. She's ready to go whenever. But Loki, I think, like we talked about, is struggling to accept that.
Right.
But with this "We Are Gods" line, I think, like you said, we're getting closer to him realizing that. And I think it would be cool if in these final episodes, like we said, he kind of realizes He Who Remains' plan, and like is like, I understand, and like I'm gonna take that. Like I need to take the role. Like I understand why he did this and why he was at the end of time. Like we do need someone there, right?
Right.
I think that would be really great.
Yeah, I agree, man. Real quick, let me jump into chat real quick. There's a few things in there. They got some questions. So this is from Dennis
with the chat.
Yeah, this is Dennis. So he says, so you think this explosion in Ouroboros is how the Kang comes back?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying for sure. And that goes back when he says like the Kang. I think for sure that the Conqueror variant from Ant-Man and the Wasp, that is going to be like the main Kang of like Kang Dynasty and like Secret Wars. Obviously, we're going to get more variants for sure. They're going to get up to some shit, but I think he's going to be the main one. And again, this was like how the door gets open for him.
Right. And then this is from Jer. Shout out to you. He was just saying
What's up, man?
Loki will recruit Mobius at the jet ski store.
Yes,
I can see that.
Please, yes. Yeah. We need Mobius in a jet ski in the store. I need that man on a jet ski though, like actually in the water. I need him living his best life, man. I need the best for Mobius.
Yeah. I feel like it's long overdue.
Yes, I love Mobius, dude. We've talked about this plenty of times, but he's just so great. And like, even in this episode, when he's talking about the hot chocolate, it's like, you're really interested in this machine. I'm like, I don't know, just the way he says shit. I love it, dude. I love it.
No,
I think this is my favorite role that Wilson's done. I mean, he's been around the block. He's been in so much shit. So yeah, legend. But I mean, personally, I'm not gonna say like, oh,
I agree with you though, man. I agree. I was thinking about this.
I love it.
I was thinking about this maybe like after our last episode, and just sitting back and thinking about it. Like, I love all the characters on this show, man. And this episode really, we got a little bit from everybody. I feel like we got some with Ouroboros, we got some stuff with B-15. Like, it just more to show you, man. I love. The casting was perfect for these people, man. It was awesome. I loved everybody's delivery, and the performances episode were really dope. You know what I mean? Like so many little things, man. It's like you said, the hot chocolate machine, that whole exchange, and then man.
Dude, the cast of this show is just so good, and like we've said this before, and again, I'll say it a million times. I would take like some shorts, or even, an entire season of just like mundane TVA shit, like make it like just like
The Office or something,
kind of like like an office comedy, and like just have B-15 and Mobius doing stuff, like they go see Ouroboros. Like I would love that, because I just think that, like you said, the chemistry between everybody is so good. Like, while we don't get enough of it, at least for me, like even, B-15 and Mobius, or B-15 and Loki, like I think they have really great chemistry. And I mean, it goes without saying, obviously Mobius and Loki and Sylvie and Loki, all of them are fantastic together. And I think even Majors, like throwing Majors into the pot, like when him, OB and Casey are all working on that thing. I love that. I thought, again, they have such good chemistry together. Everyone's just firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, man. Marvel, man. When it comes to casting, you can say whatever you want about Marvel, but when it comes to casting, man, that's one of their stronger points. Like they hit it out of the park. I can't out of the park, like you said, bro. I can't have no notes,
Yeah, no notes. I gotta say, I think it's absolutely hilarious though, and I mean, I think this is also like I did Ant-Man and the Wasp and Creed 3 like back to back with Jonathan Majors, so like I was in that vein very heavily at that time, but I thought it was hilarious because I know they filmed this around that same time of like all that stuff.
Right.
I thought it was hilarious, and maybe I just noticed this because, again, I was very in that vein at the time, but like how he's supposed to be this like nerdy professor guy, and he's just like, so jacked. Like,
he just came from like Creed 3 on set, and now he's here, and he's just like, put some more.
There was a part where he was sitting with Mobius. So I think when they were talking about the hot chocolate, and he's like going like this, and his arm is just like just busting out of that fucking suit, and like I just thought that was super funny. Like he's supposed to be this dorky guy, but he's just shredded.
Right, and I'm like, 1839 or wherever he came from. Like nobody looked like that back then.
Yeah, right. They'd be like, dude, what the fuck? I did like too he was like, I'm from Chicago, friend, the shiesty capital of the world. I don't trust anybody. Yeah, I was like, my man.
I'm like that's multiversal right there.
Yeah, right. It doesn't matter what universe you're in. But yeah, man, I'm trying to think of what else, if there's something else that in this episode that we didn't talk about, but like you said, it's just so crazy. I mean, we can just keep running around in circles back and back to the temporal loom exploding because, again, it's just such a crazy revelation. But I see your wheels turning. What do you got, Zenn?
Well, I had a question. I had a question for you, and just kind of seeing where we go from here. X5 was it? That's the other.
Yeah, Brad.
Yeah,
Brad Wolf.
I'm curious where he's gonna end up after this, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Because like he was such a wild card to me because like he had allegiance to General Docs. We still don't know the details of their relationship. Like something was there with them.
Yeah,
you know?
that weird mommy son thing.
Yeah. And now I don't feel like we're gonna figure that out. But
nah.
Just how he switched allegiances like that, and then where he ends up at the end of the episode, everybody is kind of. Who knows where we see them next? But
everyone's in the same boat.
Right. But I'm just like just his character. This episode was just very interesting to me, just to see him kind of switch sides. But you could tell he was conflicted. He didn't really want to do it, but that was like the only option he had. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Brad's out for himself, man. We talked about this. True. He's a charismatic asshole, like at least for me, like he's like the character I love to hate because like he's so good and like the actor who plays him is so great.
Yeah,
but he's just I think he's just out for himself, and like I think he did feel bad about his decision. He wasn't just like, oh yeah, screw you, Docs.
Right.
He for sure felt bad about it, but at the end of the day, he's like, I'm saving my own skin.
Yeah,
but yeah, I'm super interested to see what they do with Brad Wolf. I think that he could turn in the end. Yeah. I think in the end he might he's going to help Mobius and Loki. And I don't mean to cut you off, really quickly. We talked about this on the episode, the newest episode on the Sons of Mjolnir channel for episode 4. Josh had this thought, and I thought it was great. But I would love to see, like at the end of all this, Brad Wolf gets a good ending. Like he gets a happy ending. That's what Josh said.
Yeah.
And I'm saying I want this all to end like end credit scene of the entire series. I want them at the premiere of Zaniac 2. And it'll be A15, Mobius, Loki, Sylvie, all like in black tie attire, and they're in a movie theater, and Zaniac 2 comes on the screen, and that's just the end of the whole series. It ended on a happy note. I think that would be great.
That's a very Austin Powers ending of
right? Exactly, yes.
In the movie theater. But I love that though.
Austin Powers with it.
I love that though, man. Because what I was gonna say was I feel like deep down in his core he's not a bad guy. Like you said, he's just self-centered and selfish, you know what I mean? But like I feel like his interests aren't he's not a villain. You know what I mean? I don't think so far.
I agree.
So yeah, it was just interesting.
He's like a shithead.
Yes.
Like I wouldn't say he's a villain. He's a shithead.
Yeah. And he's been the actor, I think it's Raphael Cassell, right?
Raphael Cassell.
Shout out to him because he's been doing a great job this whole show. Like I know they haven't given him too much, but like everything we've gotten from him, he's done what he's supposed to do. Like people talking 100%. To people how they hate his character, and it's just like he's doing a good job. That's what he's supposed to do.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I mean. I don't necessarily hate him at all. Like that's the thing. It's like I love watching him on screen because I think he's just such a cynical kind of a-hole, which is fun to watch for me. It's not like I'm not watching it like, oh, I hate this guy. It's more like, oh, this fucking asshole. Like, again, this shithead, fucking Brad, man.
Oh man, I'm trying to think of anything else, man, from this episode.
Yeah,
man.
anybody that's, if there's anybody out there watching this, if me and Zenn are not just talking out into the void, hit me, hit us with some questions. You guys got some theories, hit us with something. I love talking about it.
Nah, that's facts, man.
Yeah, I'm trying to think too if there's anything like super important that we didn't hit on.
I'm thinking back though to like. Oh no, I was just gonna
Go
say,
ahead.
thinking back to like stuff that things that you've mentioned, and then things from people that a lot of other people that I know that had seen this episode beforehand, and just was talking
Mhm.
about how explosive this ending was, and y'all were correct.
Dude,
Definitely an
I'm telling you,
explosive ending, man.
it was so hard not to talk about this, and especially again the shows that we've been doing and all this stuff. Like I've been purposely, obviously, keeping a lot of information back. I really hope that I didn't, tease something too much to you guys. I don't think I did. I think I did a pretty good
Nah,
job
no,
of
no, no. Because
keeping it
I
under
was blind
wraps.
going into it, just knowing that the ending is gonna be wild. Other than that, I
Hmm.
was the choices and stuff that they made, like the whole General Docs thing, that caught me off guard. I
Yeah.
wasn't expecting him to do that with that character and those characters at all. You feel what I'm saying? So like, that was
Hmm.
one of the big things for me. That I was like, wow, oh, okay, they were going there.
Yeah, like you said, the whole episode was just like, wow, they're going there. Like
Yeah,
with everything, with the loom, excuse me, with Docs and the Minutemen. Like I was not expecting the Docs and the Minutemen thing at all. Like again, I knew Ravonna was on her kind of thing, but I didn't think it was we were going there with it.
yeah.
But yeah, and even like when we talked about Ravonna, like it was super hard not to talk about like stuff with her too,
Mm-hmm.
like her and He Who Remains, and like where she was, and because I mean that our I think what was it? I'm all confused now. Second episode, right? She's
Yeah,
not in there. That was like our big thing. We're like, where's Ravonna?
yeah,
And I'm
yeah,
like, I
yeah,
don't know.
yeah. Oh man, yeah, that was crazy, man. And just to see, and the interesting part to me too with that character, even from the things that we seen in this episode, kind of showing you that flashback with her and He Who Remains, we still don't know about who she is. Like, because I'm sure it's way more
Mhm.
backstory with her character. How did she? Why her? Why is she the one that was at the
Mhm.
end of time? Why did he pick? You know what I mean? Like, it's still so
Yeah.
much about her character and her relationship with these Kang variants that we don't know. And she doesn't
Mhm.
know as well. You know what I mean? So I feel like at least from what we've seen that she doesn't know.
Yeah, I think honestly, I'm thinking about it now, and I would not be surprised at all if I don't think the finale. So episode 5.
Mm-hmm.
I could see episode 5 fucking with us and like just taking us on a complete detour
Okay.
of like Ravonna and Kang and have an episode of like you were saying, like explaining like where did a Ravonna originally come from? Because in the comics, there, I forget what she's from, like an ancient timeline, not ancient, but like she's from one of Kang's original timelines that he conquers,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like right before he becomes Rama Tut in Egypt, one of his other like famous variants.
Yeah.
But she is like the princess of this like tribe, these people, and that's where he originally meets her and falls in love with her, and she dies. And that is one of the things that sets Kang on this whole timeline journey, is to save Ravonna and to find her in another timeline and to save her life. And he fails multiple times, which causes him to go here, which creates another variant, and then goes here, which creates another variant. So they, like I said, if they go that route with it, I could see again them fucking with us and leaving the whole temporal loom meltdown hanging for a little bit longer, and give us just an entire episode of maybe not Victor Timely, but like I said, the a Ravonna episode. We don't even make it like a Kang and Ravonna episode. You could just make it straight Ravonna.
Yeah,
And
we
then
don't even see him to the end or something like that. You know what I mean?
exactly,
Like
we could see everything up until the moment that we saw in this episode of him to, you are a Marvel, Ravonna Renslayer. I'd be proud to lead with you. See everything that leads to that moment.
Right.
See her leading the multiversal war. See her there at the TVA. See, I guarantee you, her and Miss Minutes probably have a relationship that she doesn't know about, and like Miss Minutes just is not saying. Again, if she was around during the same time, they have to know each other.
Yeah.
So I could see them throwing us for a loop. And like I said, episode 5 is just a Ravonna episode. And then that's when we see her in the void, like in the trailer. That's how we get that stuff.
Yeah, man. I'm not mad at that. I'm not mad at that theory right there. I'm not mad at that theory. This is perfectly, because Dennis in the chat, he was asking what's our theories for episode 5 and 6 right there. So you gave your 5. You gave your 5. I'm a piggyback off that 5 right there with mine. I think I definitely think we'll probably get some Ravonna. I definitely think we'll probably get some of the other characters on wherever they end up, kind of seeing them pop up on the timeline and seeing some more of that as well. I feel like it's either one of those. It's like either we're gonna get Ravonna or we're gonna get these other like Mobius, Loki, Sylvie, wherever they end up after this craziness that happens, you know. But for now,
100%. And I mean, we saw in the trailers also there's a shot of like Casey in like some kind of prison or something like that. So I think that all gives credence to what we're saying here and what you're saying about them being, you know, flown to different timelines or whatnot. So I think all of that is kind of evidence of that. Like they're just going to be, and I think we even saw in like the teaser long ago of Mobius in a jet ski shop.
Yes.
Like being a retail worker.
Yeah.
So again, I really think I would say my theory, episode 5, Ravonna centered episode. Then episode 6, we see everyone in these different timelines. And so, like I said, we see Casey is in prison for whatever reason. I don't know what the hell he did. And then Mobius is at his jet ski shop. We have Loki time slipping all over the damn place. But yeah, and then like episode 6 is them figuring that out. They're like, how, you know, what to do now. Because I mean, the loom is done. The loom is broken.
Yeah.
It has broken. So how do we respond to that? What, you know, I think that's going to be what episode 6 is.
Right. I got a question, man. Now that you mentioned the loom being destroyed and that being done, do you think the Kang that we do get that's going to be the antagonist for like Kang Dynasty, Secret Wars, things like that, do you think do you think that's going to be one of his goals, is to conquer and to recreate this sacred timeline again?
That's an interesting question. I guess you'd have to think so, which I need to go back and watch Ant-Man and the Wasp to really refresh my memory. Yeah. But how I understand it is, so He Who Remains created the sacred timeline to prevent the Kang variants from popping up, right? But also, even deeper than that, I think it was more, from what I got, at least from what I got from the Conqueror variant in Ant-Man and the Wasp, was a lot of that multiversal war was against him. It was the variants against the Conqueror. Right. And then we see the Council of Kangs in that post-credit scene, like, he's escaped our prison or whatever they say. So, like, the Council put him in that prison.
Right.
So to me, I feel like that means that He Who Remains probably screwed over the Council as well. And he worked with the Council to banish the Conqueror into Subatomica, the quantum realm. And then He Who Remains also fucked over the Council after the multiversal war. Was like, you know what? I don't need any of you guys. And that's when he created a sacred timeline, which, like, obviously with his death, made them all come back, which is why we see them in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania.
Exactly. Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, like I said, I feel like I'd have to really get into the multiversal war is important, is I think the main takeaway from this. Is I think that there's a lot of questions still with what happened in that war. And I mean, he Who Remains, which, while we've talked about, you know, we can't really trust all that he says, I feel like he was very genuine in if we all take our minds back to, again, that season finale, he was like, I ended the multiversal war. Like, I conquered Goliath and I did that. Like, he was like, I did all this. I think like he obviously had a power trip. And again, after they banished the Conqueror, I think he turned on all the other, like I said, the Council of Kangs. So now that they're all back, they want their shit back. You know, Immortus, Ramatut, Scarlet Sentry, and Mr. Geffen, Griffin. I think it's Griffin, but yeah, man, they're all out there. We saw the Kang Tower in the Void, which is a Mr. Griffin thing. So they're coming back for their seat at the table, man. You know?
Yeah. It's dope how this show just answers things and leaves you with so many more questions. You know what I mean? Because like I'm even
and that's
thinking,
the thing I love.
Nah, I was gonna say even I'm thinking back to the statue or not the statue, the Kangs on the wall in the war room and the TVA, how that looks like three different Kangs. You know what I mean? Like it's like it just even more questions. Where was other Kangs involved with the TVA in the early parts of it? You know what I mean? Like so many questions.
I think so, man. For sure. Yeah, and I would say I'll throw on that too. I think you're right on the money. If we remember the statue of Kang from the first episode, he's not wearing He Who Remains robes.
No.
He's wearing the Conqueror's getup.
Yeah.
He's wearing the Conqueror's armor. So I think, again, that kind of sheds some light. Like, I think that all of the Kangs kind of worked at the TVA or, oversaw the TVA. That's why we have the statues of him, the Echo Wall.
Yeah.
Like, they were all there at one point. And again, we just talked about this. Marvel doesn't do things by accident. And I don't think it's an accident that the statue was wearing, again, the Conqueror armor. So I think, again, you're cooking, man. You're right on the money.
Hey, man, that's what we do here.
Hey, man, we cook. This should be on the Food Network because we cooking over here.
That's facts, man.
But I think that I'm trying to think. I think we covered everything, man. Again, we could sit here all day and just speculate what's going to happen in these next two episodes. But at the end of the day, I think it really could go any way. Yeah. Like they left it open in such a way where they could go multiple different routes with it. And to go off what you were just saying, that's what I really love about this show is I feel like, at least for me, there's so many threads open right now that if we don't get answers to all of them, I'm not going to be disappointed. If anything, that just makes me more excited for more TVA stuff. Like I'm excited I know a lot of people really want Loki back in the 616 or, the Earth 199999, depending on who you ask. But I honestly am totally okay with leaving him in this little corner of the universe for a little bit longer, just because I'm having so much fun in this whole TVA world and everything that's going on. So to me, I think they've done a really great job with opening up so many threads to where we can have a lot concluded in these last two episodes, but there's still a lot they can leave open for future future seasons, or even other projects like Secret Wars and stuff like that. So again, I think there's no way they're going to tie everything up.
Yeah.
But to me, I think that's a good thing. And that makes me excited.
Same here, bro. You hit it. That was right on the money, man. Like,
thank you, man.
Yeah, man. Just Loki being in this TVA situation, multiversal Loki, you know what I mean? I feel like it's so much more fun to me right now with this, where his character is at. I don't even want to bring him back to the 616, not yet, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, it's too much fun.
What is he going to do there?
Right.
Like, we want the Thor Loki reunion. We all want it for sure. Like, I do probably more than most people, but I think we got time to get there. And again, it's like after he reunions with Thor, what is he going to do?
Yeah.
I think he plays a much more important role where he is now, and he can affect a lot more things being in his little own pocket universe of the TVA. I think it's good for his character. We've seen the kind of, character progression that he's gone on through being in the TVA. And I think this episode we've talked about it is a good example of that, and like how far he's come. And especially with the conversation with him and Sylvie, he's like, what about OB? What about Casey? What about B-15? Like, these are he feels for them and he's like behind them. You know what I mean? So again, I really think that that's like hinting at him taking over this leadership role. Like, he firmly, I think, believes in the TVA now.
Yeah.
Like he's what not
Yeah.
he who remains is TVA, but like
Whatever
he thinks
version.
the
Yeah.
TVA is needed.
Yeah.
Like there needs to be a TVA. So I think going back to your theory, I think you've been on the money this whole time. I think he could be taking on that Loki who remains.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
Yeah, man. Bro. I'm just so excited. I'm excited now that everyone's caught up.
Yeah.
Like I don't have to keep anything under my hat anymore. I can just freely talk about it and just theorize with all you guys. And I'm so happy also with like the reaction everyone's had. It's really great that like which maybe this says more about me, but like when I saw Ant-Man, I was like, man, people are gonna love this. And like that did not happen, obviously. So like for this was another one where I was like, man, this is gonna be freaking crazy. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad people agreed and were like on the ride with me, because like I said, I just loved it. I love the cliffhanger, so I am very happy with the reception I'm seeing it get online.
Yeah, I still gotta check social media. I just still want to see the temperature of everybody's thoughts and stuff. But like from talking to you, talking to Dennis and Jim and everybody, I'm right with y'all feeling this was one of the great ones that they've dropped so far. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I'll go as far, I love WandaVision. I really love Moon Knight, but I gotta say, I think with this second season, Loki's taking the top spot for me. And also tie with Miss Marvel. Yeah. I personally really love Miss Marvel. I have, a very personal love with that story and that character. Mm-hmm. But Loki is just, I think unbiasedly, like without like my comic favorites and stuff, I think unbiasedly Loki is the best made, written, produced show that Marvel's done so far.
I have to agree with you there, man. That's always, those three are my top three. Anytime I talk about the Disney Plus Marvel shows, Miss Marvel, Loki, and WandaVision, and Loki and WandaVision honestly interchange all the time on my 1 and 2. But like you said, with this season 2 and seeing what they're doing and setting up, like it's, I don't know, man. It's up there. I think it
overtakes WandaVision for me, dude. Honestly, I think it does. At least for me, I'll be the first one. I know people probably are scared to say that, but I'll be the martyr. I'll be the first one. I'm saying it. Loki season 2 is better than WandaVision. Boom, done. I said it. Wanda stands. Please don't come after me. I love Wanda. She's great. Don't dox me or something. I don't know. Man, do you got anything else about this episode, about, another thing you're hoping for the next 2 episodes? And anybody in chat, this is your last chance before, me and Zen are busy guys. We got stuff to do. We got to get out of here. So, like I said, Zen, you got anything else?
No, I think we covered everything, man. I'm just excited to see. I'm really like, I feel like we're all kind of in the dark right now. And it's like, I'm super excited to see where they take us with these last 2. And Loki, one of the reasons why is one of the best shows to me from Marvel so far is because in that first season they stuck the landing so greatly. You know what I mean? Like they took us places that we weren't expecting to go, and it also set up so much for where we're gonna go with the the multiversal saga that we're in. So I'm just hoping for more of that with these last 2 that we got coming. And yeah, man, Loki.
Hell yeah, Loki. Like you said, I just hope they leave it open for more seasons. Yeah. Like. Again, we're for sure getting all of these characters back, whether we get a Loki season 3 or not. But I really hope they just kind of lean into it heavy. Like, yeah, baby, we're coming back for season 3. Like that's how they end it.
Yeah.
And again, I'll just leave it to, I really think we're going to leave this season with either a new Kang variant or a variant returning, whether that's Victor Timely, the Conqueror, He Who Remains, or like I said, a brand new one. I'll bet my bottom dollar on it for the maybe 3-4 people that may be watching this. Mm-hmm. If I'm right, you owe me $1 or I'll owe you $1. So
you gotta hold him to that, man. Hold him to that on social media.
Dennis, man, he's still out there, bro. I'm coming to collect. But yeah, I think that's, at least for me on my end, I think that's all I got for everybody, Zen. Again, we could go back to talking about Ouroboros and stay here for another 3 hours.
That's right,
But
man.
yeah, like I said, we're busy people, man. Everyone out there, we got stuff to do. So Zen, anything else, chat, before we end this? Anything else? We'll give you 3 seconds.
I'm good. I'm good, man. I think the chat
Let's
is
see.
good.
I say, yeah, give it a minute to play some Jeopardy music. Well, all right. I think we're gonna have to just end it there. Then I've never done a live, so this is all new to me. I don't know how to end a live. Like
I mean,
when
just
we
do
do
it how
our
you usually do, man.
when we do our recorded episodes,
Yeah.
we have our for all time always, baby.
Yeah.
Stay hydrated.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
All right. Well, again, that's all we got for you. I hope you all have a fantastic week. Thank you, everyone. If you guys are here watching this, thank you so much for tuning in and hanging out with us. Even though this is different than our other episodes, I had to hook up with Zen and we had to come and nerd out about this. We had to. So thank you so much for listening to us. I hope all your stacks are fat. Stay hydrated out there. For all time always, baby.
For all time always.